So it should be recording. So how's everybody doing? It's not too overwhelming, the classes and so forth? No. So I like to first, in the first part, very briefly pick up where we left, which was we were talking about social agency and this documentary, The Social Dilemma. I don't know if you had a chance to see it in Netflix.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you watch it. Good. So my lab is not doing too well on this. Julian's lab is like good. You guys, I can tell that you really are into this whole agency thing. So I went to their website, and turns out there are things we can do. It's not all hopeless. I mean, it's a little bit dark. When you watch the documentary, you leave kind of heartbroken. Like, where did my agency go in all of this, right? And I have a friend who does this for, this is her primary area of research right now. And there are, legislation, there's research on how to implement legislation, basically, but it's in a very nascent stage. And we were collaborating, trying to bring to that crowd the model of reafference that the nervous system has, because in self-monitoring the activity that you self-generate, you may be able to do something. But then we got to talk about it and started to think, I started to think that maybe the nervous system is not the most adequate system, that the system would be more the immune system, because it seems to me it's sort of like we created this outcome and became sort of a parasitic behavior affecting the host, which is us, and we continue to feed it. So we may want to look at the autoimmune disorders that deal with the system attacking itself, because we can't attack ourselves if we regulate the internet use and everything and set kind of too many rules, we will severely impact our agency to further fix this problem. So in this recursivity lies the conundrum of how we go about it. But it's an open research question in philosophy right now. There's a whole field on privacy that is fascinating. And since I have all these biometrics and they, give you automated trends on intentionality and so forth, we're talking.
These are sort of, especially the kind social dilemma, those actions are more cognitive than motor in a strange way. Like, yeah, these are epistemological actions, what I believe in, things like that.
Yeah.
Which then dictate what I do. So like a lot of the kind of cases we study, which around agency were more motor action related. And that's my sort of something I'm thinking about. Like, if we have to look at social agency, where there's not as much motor action as cognitive actions, mental actions, epistemological actions. In that case, is nervous system the right thing to look at, or do we need to look at similar signals but coming from elsewhere?
So it's a very good argument there, question. So let's go back to the definition of motor and redefine that, because you're referring to motor movements, but what we're referring to is motion as a change of position over time of some parameter. And that can happen in a cognitive space as well.
Okay.
So our thoughts can be thought of as dynamic motion.
I see what you mean. Okay.
And so in that sense, we shift the problem to the cognitive domain, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. but we use a model of reafference in the cognitive signals to represent the dynamical thoughts as this continuous signal that is moving. And then we can bring the machinery of time series analysis, for example, to look at that dynamics. And
I see what you mean.
yeah, so it's not motor movement.
Okay.
It's motion at a level of dynamics and stochastic changes. So that's why they were looking at my work, because it does precisely that. But then I objected to my colleague in that I don't think the somatic sensory motor system is what we should be looking at, because that's just the implementer. But there is an underlying system which is the immune system, which also deals with dynamical changes, but it does so in a more sophisticated way, because it marries different levels of, like the microbiome and the actual physical entity, which is us, the physical body. And it maintains a balance. It knows how to maintain a balance. And you could think of this thing that we have created with social media as this esoteric entity. It's not necessarily tangible, physically tangible, but it has a life of its own now, and it's killing us. I mean, not yet, but it will if we continue, because it's causing now all this, is contributing to our misunderstanding of what's happening, because we no longer know what is true versus what is not true, and becomes very difficult to self-monitor a system when you can't rely on the signal that you're receiving. So
but why would immune system be sensitive to this?
Because of the parasitic nature of the social media outcome. The consequences of the social media are now parasitic. They are beginning to impact us, the system that it created it.
But only metaphorically, right? They're not actually in a blood or anything. An immune system sensitive to things in a blood.
Okay. So
unless I'm confused.
So what I'm proposing is an analogy, a metaphor, to understand the mechanism of a system that has made us survive, evolutionarily speaking, and be here. So this is how I do science. I don't look for what already exists, that is being, that is implemented and so on already. For a given new problem domain, I look for analogies in systems that do something else, not necessarily what we're looking at, but have elements that help us solve a problem that we've never faced. This is a problem we've never faced because social media didn't exist 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Advertisement did exist, and it did subliminal training for people. So it's kind of a different, it's kind of a similar concept when they targeted advertisement to make their profit. The difference here is that we gave up all our privacy unknowingly and continue to do so. And so anybody now can search, just by virtue of purchasing a cell phone and using it, being a user, we gave up our privacy. They know everything about us.
In fact, I want to add to this one. Literally everyone, like when I applied for a visa, like when it was like 1.5 years ago, the US government asked for all my social media. So now they have everything, like
everything.
It's crazy.
You sign up for Facebook, you have everything in there if you fill in the forms. You use Google, you use Gmail, you have your alternative contact information. They give you they get from you not only your actual information, but information about alternative. And in a number of other things, they actually ask for, like in insurance, when you go to the doctors, who's responsible for you. So they link you to, so there are ways to link you.
Right. And that's in the US. The reason why they needed Theo's information is because the European Union manages data and data privacy a whole lot different than the US. And this comes from not only my years as a pharmaceutical consultant, but my husband, who has continued, because I left the industry about 8 years ago. But one of the big problems that U.S. companies had with dealing with European Union countries, and specifically patients in clinical trials and or patients who use the drugs, was that and some countries in the European Union or in Europe are even stricter than the European Union regulations, but there was a limit on where you could store the data. And, you know, like, for example, in Sweden 15 years ago, the data on Swedish citizens was not allowed to leave the country, like literally the geographical area. You couldn't take that data anywhere else. Now, obviously, they've had to probably lax it a little bit because, you know, Facebook is a multinational, and in order for Sweden to be on Facebook, they would have to be able to have data outside of Sweden. But just from what I know in the past and what my husband has dealt with currently, the data privacy that happens in the US, like our complete loss of data privacy, is not as complete in the European Union.
Except from the UK.
It's still there. Yeah, it's still there, but it's not as just like they know who has their data and where it's stored, because there was a couple of cases within like the last 5 years where countries sued Google and Facebook and some of the others because they were capturing too much data and they made them destroy it. Now, how much of it was actually truly 100% destroyed is a whole other argument. But I know that the companies lost in European courts recently. And so they had to get Theo's information because they couldn't get it from Facebook and Google and all of those other places, because you can't in the US. They had to actually make him give it to them.
Only the UK, right? Only the UK has, I know it shares information. It's the 4 countries.
Right.
In the north, because of the terrorism laws and all that, I think the UK shares information with the US.
Oh,
and it impacts everything, because even these digital health concepts that we're trying to advance have issues with who owns the data. You know, who's the owner of the data? If you're a patient, right? Is your data owned by the company that is collecting? You know, like you sign up for Fitbit. Do you own your data? Is Fitbit the owner of your data? And so forth. So one of the things that I was just chatting about with my friend as she was getting ready to present in this conference on privacy and legislation, that I was bringing up was 2 things. One was that there should be legislation to implement filters that buffer you and the company and protect you, give you ownership of your data, so that you have self-determination on what to do, on what somebody can do with it, and establishing rules that penalize whoever infringes that. So it's actually there is accountability. The accountability has not been created, basically. There's none. So there has to be accountability created. The second thing is, and it goes to also to ownership and to identity and so forth. We should be able to create our own identity, because ultimately these people, these companies rely on algorithms that rely on probabilities and on metric spaces and on similarity metrics and on things like that. So if you own the metric, you define the space. And no similarity distance metric can get to you, because they would never know how close somebody is to you in any parameter space. And that's the only way that these algorithms can work. So there has to be, now you require a level of sophistication to understand what I'm saying. And I think you do by now, because I've been talking about parameter spaces and stuff like that. But there is something fundamental to any algorithm, which is the notion of who is your neighbor and how you determine how close your neighbor is to you. And that determines how you can stratify, how you can find patterns and so forth. You distort that, and there's no algorithm that can find the patterns necessary to identify who you are when. And the third thing is this has to be converted to a dynamic thing where you are able to also shift those metrics. You own them and you shift them at your convenience. And that will give us back our agency. And these people cannot just arbitrarily do what they're doing. And those are like basic things that can be done at the level of algorithms. But at the level of their social dilemma webpage, so let me share it. They're already taking precautions on how to handle the whole thing. And if you notice when you watch the documentary, these were people that were like the VPs of these companies. Of, there's the guy who invented the like button there. There's a like who invented Google Drive. I mean, these are people that were really insiders. And the other thing that you notice is that none of them allow their kids to use social media, because I mean, they know how bad this is. And it's sad.
I wonder, we're talking about how they build the space from your Google search and all these. They build a representation of you basically, and that's how ads work. So I'm thinking, like, if this could be extended in the sense that that would include biometrics on a different level. For example, the way someone moves the mouse, the cursor around the screen, depends on his individual. So I'm wondering.
All these things can be.
I'm sure this has not happened. That detection from how I move my mouse around.
No, not yet, because.
But it would be useful for.
But not yet. But it's.
He did it. He did it with the keys.
They can get the keystrokes. They can also. They can get the microphone. Do you know that they can turn on your camera and microphone and monitor you?
Yeah. I know, but I will detect.
Okay.
Well, and that's why.
No, not necessarily. You wouldn't. Not necessarily. So, I mean, there's a lot of monitoring going on that we're not aware of. And that's the thing, that they're targeting the unawareness component of this. And what we have to do, one of the things we have to do is bring it up to the surface, bring it up to awareness so that people know.
So they can detect from keyboard from.
So basically, how this works is when you visit a website, they would have trackers on the web page. So they can't track everything you do, but they can track everything you do on the web page, including mouse movement. And it's
patterns.
The technology is sophisticated enough that you have third-party players you don't even need to develop your system. You can just rent their system, put a tracker. They will give you a tracker that you embed in your web page. The coders would do that. Your developers would do that. You put it in your web page, and then anyone who's on that web page, their mouse movement would be tracked, and you can create heat maps. Where were their mouses to see where people are focusing, and then And furthermore, like the trajectory, I actually looked into it. Can the trajectories be used to figure out cognitive loads that people have? So if they're going from point A to point B, this is a straight path. And then just like you had the perpendicular to the maximum deviation, that metric exists for mouse trajectories. And the idea is that the more deviated your path is, the more inaccurate your fine motor movements are, the more inaccurate your fine motor movements are, the more cognitive load you are under. So that's
So
the chain of proxy.
can you mask it in the
Yeah,
sense that
that's the thing that's the
can
thing
you,
that I'm saying. You
so
build
they gather the wrong data from you?
you build your own filter to distort what
Yeah,
they're gathering,
filter,
and obviously somebody is going to try to reverse engineer and get at your own filter, and you know, but it's at least you make it harder, and
Yeah.
the point is that there has to be legislation that protects you. So I mean, you do have this layer of protection, but at the same time, whoever attempts to infringe in that is liable, because right now there is no accountability and there's no liability out there. They can just come and get your data, use it, and destroy your credit, for example, and destroy your life.
Right. Well, and what's even, so there's that part, but additionally, so Facebook owns all of the data you put on Facebook, which means they can use it however they want.
Yeah.
But they also have zero liability to anything that anyone posts on Facebook. So, and that's in 1996 law. There's literally lines that say you can't be held liable if you have a social platform. You can't be held liable for stuff that other people write on there. So comments on blogs, things like that, you're not liable for. But they also own it all. So you're giving them everything. They have zero liability. And if somebody says something horrible about you on Facebook, you can't sue Facebook. You can only sue the person who said it about you. And that might not get you very far, because there could be 100 more ready in line to mess up your credit, screw up your life, whatever it is. Beyond that, and we're kind of facing this conundrum right now in our house. We have a TV that is approximately 15 years old. And there's pixels on it that are starting to go bad, but we won't put a smart TV in our living room. And you can't find a 50-inch non-smart television anywhere anymore. And so we're like just hoping our TV doesn't die before this becomes a bigger problem for people, because everybody wants smart TVs because it's convenient. But like, we've made it a point. We have no Alexa. We have no Hey Google. We have none of that in our house because we don't want it there.
Yeah, we don't have that either. And I turn off microphone and cameras as much as I remember.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it was so funny because one of the companies my husband worked for, one of their CIOs gave like the whole board these Alexa speakers. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And he wouldn't even bring it in the house. He was like, you need to take that to work, or you need to take it and put it out in the she shed or something, but it's not coming in my house. You know, and I completely understand. I mean, and it's at school in my classroom right now, because I don't want it in my house.
I think one should think that, ask why someone would want some information from me. If it's about credit and stuff like that, it doesn't matter who you are. They will all want to scam you and get your money. But regarding other stuff, you should ask the question. Like, it's very possible that for most people, they will not even care to get that data. I don't know.
But that's
It's like a more
it's a Skinner conditioning model. So you get this juicy reward fast, and you're being trained unknowingly.
Convenient.
Yeah. That's what it is. And so you've been trained beneath your awareness. You've been trained to do things they want you to do, whether it's buy certain products, whether it's access certain sites, whether it's they drive your behavior based on the information that they're getting from you and the reward that you're showing that you're getting from that. You're showing your reward, and they know that. And so you're showing your learning path. You're showing the degree of the reward that you're getting. You're exposing yourself. It's not just the fact that you gave your identity and your privacy. That's just the first step of many. It's the consequences of that are actually interesting to look at, which are precisely how they are training people to think what they want them to think. And that, the first layer is, okay, buying power. So, okay, so they make trillion dollars profits and buy the world. But the second, so that's just the first gross level of thing. But more intrinsically is that we're destroying humanity.
Right.
So that's the consequence that is really scary, and that's where I bring in this parasitic idea. How do we turn this parasitic outcome into one that is harmoniously coexistent with us? We don't want to give up the advantages of having this type of technology, but we must transform it into a symbiotic relationship that doesn't destroy us, and it is destroying us. I just look around what's happening in the US and everywhere in the world, and how people are killing each other, and it's like worldwide, and clearly it's hard to track the direct causes of it, but the fact that we are being fed information that is so divisive and misleading, and that we cannot tell what is true from what is a lie anymore, certainly plays a big role in what's happening worldwide with humanity.
Every time we accept cookies.
Well, and yeah, I don't. I actually have it on there where I go through and choose what things I'm going to share. And it's interesting because when you accept all, if you've never actually clicked, let me see what I'm accepting, it's kind of creepy things that they throw on there.
People are lazy to look.
Right.
At all.
And if you look, they automatically turn them all off for you, so that because they know you're gonna, if it's turned on, you're more likely to look at what they're collecting. But like I noticed when I cleared all my cookies, and then I turned off the, I asked to be asked before I allow it. You have to like open it up and look at it. And if you look at these things, the things that they are collecting are none of their business. And
location, it's
well, they're like where you went before, how you got here, where you go.
Yeah, I've received spam emails,
right,
that mention my location, and I don't even give it my, and it's from cookies also.
Yeah,
and
yeah, they can see the IP address and all kinds of make all kinds of inferences. I mean, it's like forensic.
Well, I had to go in actually, and it's funny because when I created that survey that we did on Qualtrics, I told it not to I didn't click not to record personal data until after I did the clinical trial training. And then I saw that, and then I went back, and it was not only getting their IP address, it was getting their zip code. And I was like, there's not even a field on the form for the zip code. How is this thing pulling their zip code down?
Traceable. It's traceable.
It's tractable, your IP address, location.
We use Snowplow in our company, which is a tracking website. And all we did was put a tracker on the website. And it collects around 70 different fields for us, including identification. Even if you're not logged in, there's a cookie that will identify you. You get all the device, what device you're using, what operating system, what is your IP, what is your latitude, longitude. If you're using your mobile, you get the speeds, gyroscope reading, all of that stuff. There's like 70 different fields that you get quickly. Like it's sophisticated to the point that your developers don't have to do much work at all. They have to write one line of code in all of the web scripts, and that's it.
And how do you have access to this one? Do you know? Oh no, I mean,
I'm here to give all the secrets out. Just ask.
Well, there are companies. When the election happened in 2016, there was this UK company that was this guy from Stanford created an algorithm and some idea which came out of basic research, and then the company bought it and whatever, and they developed it further. And the whole Skinner conditioning is just based the
Have you
basis
seen
of
Brexit? Has anybody seen Brexit?
Yeah,
on
yeah,
HBO?
yeah.
Yeah, that is all about that.
That's
And
all
it was
about that.
Very eye-opening. It was
Oh,
very,
What
Very
happened
eye-opening.
There's one called The Great Hack that is also
Yeah.
exclusively like on that, and that was really interesting and terrifying.
yeah.
I'm afraid if my husband sees these things, he might start wearing a tinfoil hat. He's already like, I don't want smart TV. I don't want this. I don't want that.
I think this is something that could, if I mean more people have access to how these things work, you can actually protect your privacy, and I don't know,
Well,
because I think that once I start doing something, some
But
activity,
by the law, you have to, since we live in a country of law, you have to legislate it and make it like on paper. If you break the law, you pay. You know, there are punishments. There are consequential punishments.
I cannot hide my
They're not
privacy.
cheating it most of the
But
time. Most of the times they've already gotten your consent by that one OK button that you click when you visit
Right,
the
accept
website.
cookie.
That's all it takes.
Yep. Yeah, but and here's the thing though, you also, there has to be law and there has to be punishment, but the punishment has to be bigger than the benefit. You know, like the problem with a lot of the laws that the FDA has and the punishment for those is, for example, one company did off-label promotions to doctors. They made $5 billion off of a drug, and their fine from the FDA was like 50 million. They don't care. Here's your 50 million.
It's just like paying a tax
Right,
for
exactly.
them.
So
Like,
it's got to be big enough that it actually matters.
yeah, it should be.
And it has to be a collective thinking about our preservation as a race, because and the laws and the punishments have to be, you know, also weighted by the participation of the country in this, because I mean, you have third world countries that are deeply affected by these things, you know, and have not even access to the internet.
Right, and so there has to be a balance.
Yeah,
you know? It has to. You have to own it. It's not the government outlawing TikTok.
I think it should be a reputation punishment, in the sense a company does something. I think the biggest punishment would be to absolutely negatively.
Well,
promote.
I wonder if making it visible, because all of this is invisible, right? So it's like, all right, let's take Donald Trump. The guy's full of it, and it's been, I mean, anybody who knows anything about behavior and watches him realizes, oh my God, he's totally lying. It's no other word for it.
Yeah, he's a fake.
He's totally fake. It's like a magician. It's just a true magician. But the magician is successful only until you reveal his tricks. So here's a good law. You have the person, right? He's or the company or whatever, and there's gotta be a thermometer or some kind of feedback that tells the user how full of shit this person is or company. You know?
It's crazy we don't have like fact checkers.
Bullshit
Like,
meter.
how is that not a thing? You know?
Yeah,
It's easy to
exactly.
implement that.
What is the fact checker of each company?
Real
Like,
time,
okay,
right.
you have this Mark Zuckerberg, right? He's facing these trials and whatever, and you watch CNN and he says, yeah, you know, and we're making sure this and that, and that I don't want my daughters to be, and it's like, really, where have you been up to now? And, you know, so you have to have some kind of collective shame or something that, I mean, unless that doesn't work anymore. I mean, it's like,
Well, I mean, and I go back to the pharmaceutical industry because that's what I know.
yeah.
I mean, Purdue Pharma is one of the only privately owned pharmaceutical companies in the US. Okay, they're privately owned. They're owned by the Sackler family. They have been fighting these opioid lawsuits from cities, towns, counties, states, in the federal government. They've been fighting these suits for 10 years. Now, they promoted their opioid drug to doctors who then gave it to everybody. And that's what got these people hooked. And that's what helped create the opioid crisis. But nobody, it's still going on. They're still fighting.
Yeah.
But nobody's really talking about it anymore.
Didn't they just lose a big settlement and have to admit, I mean,
They did.
Because they have, it's a fine and they're all still on the board though. They all still like own the company. And so.
Right, exactly. It's a fine.
Like,
And so I go back to how much did they make?
but it's like they have to pay like 8 trillion or something like in debt, or 8 billion when they owe like trillions to the government. But because the government is taking control of the company, the Sackler family just put like $10 billion into like private trusts for their family. They're pretty much going to disappear and pay no consequences and like no jail time or anything. And then the company's still going to be producing opioids like under the government jurisdiction. Like nothing is going to change. It's just now instead of like this family, it's the US government.
Right.
So, like even when we get the government involved, like
So I think that so I wanted to spend some time talking about this in class because as cognitive scientists, we have an opportunity to actually, and people who study agency and lead, and we have, leaders in the study of these things, we have an opportunity to, have a voice and tell these companies our scientific vision and based on what we study in the human nervous system, based on what we know, and this might help. So let me share, and then I'll get into the PowerPoint of the class to talk about ways to detect autonomy and so forth. Agency and so forth. So let me share the screen so that we can navigate. I just wanted to show you. Do you see it?
Yes.
So this is that website they created for social dilemma. They created the Center for Humane Technology. And so you can navigate the site, and it's extremely interesting to do so. But then this is like, get involved is the interesting thing, because then you can go into it and it goes for different places. So we can have a word and say something about it, and also promote it ourselves. So they have even like this form, Human Design Guide, and these are we can fill this in and send it and provide sort of tips or suggestions. So I think that we could do something, so that to design products that are more sophisticated about human nature. So I think that there is, I think we can do some stuff. It's not just, talk about it, but actually we could take some action that is meaningful, because we do sit around and think about these things and write about them and measure them and think about better ways to measure them. So we're well positioned to provide that kind of lens from the scientific standpoint. All right, so yeah.
I just wanted one thing.
Yeah.
In academia, often we get this notion of being the nice person, but we are often not the nice guys. That
no, we're not.
A lot of these technologies exist precisely because researchers worked on these, published, then those publications were taken, and sometimes these researchers were especially paid to create that. So academia is often, very often, very complicit in these.
Very much so, and in it, but there is also in academia this reductionist model, and there is also social clubs and you know, people are who think different are, you know, outed from these social clubs and the elite. There's the elite of academia. So by no means I'm saying we can do this with the badge of academia because we're, you know, self-righteous and so on. No, not at all. But we are world citizens who are well educated, and we are in a small percentage of the population that have had the privilege to receive this education and to think about things that not everybody is thinking. Not everybody's having this discussion today, and so in that regard, there are things we can do. We're smart. Our brain has been trained to think critically, and that's what we should be taking advantage of. Academia, the infrastructure of academia is just as bad as corporate America. You know, there's nothing, you know, there's nothing for me, you know, after 20 years of being in it, to stand out there and say, oh, we're better than you are. No, I have gone through hell. I mean, just for being an innovator. I know this very well. Why am I still in academia? Because it does hold a principle, and that principle that you can do something for other people, you can turn your science into something translational that can help people, can help humanity, and you have ways to build your own agency. You don't have that in corporate America as much because you truly depend on your boss and on the latest fad of the company. And so maybe you worked on a project for 2 years and gave it all your energy, and then a new boss comes in and says, you know what, this is not in my agenda. I want you to work on this other project, and that's it. In academia, one thing is that you can lend continuity to the stuff that you work on. And even if you work for a lab, heck, I worked in a lab and I was doing 10 different projects for other people that had nothing to do with that lab. Your time is yours. You can't do that because you pay some amount of money, but the rest is your time. You're not like, whereas in corporate America, they own you, and they own you so much that by the end of the day, you're exhausted. You don't want to do anything else. You're exhausted. And so it's a trade-off. So yeah, academia is by no means this pristine place where, you know, we're all self-righteous and so on. Far from it. Far from it. If you're an innovator, you suffer like hell. But there's all this other stuff, and that notion of agency, you can build it yourself. There are ways to build it. I mean, I'm an example of that, how to create alternative revenue streams for science that doesn't exist out there. You go to the NIH. Mona, tell us about your experience, right? She goes to the NIH to get advice on her F31 and comes back with like, Liz, what is this? I'm like, yeah, I know. They're asking you to do p-value statistics and significant hypothesis testing and power analysis and whatever, all that BS. And here we are telling you, you know, much more how you can stratify a random draw the population, how you can track it, how you can do this or that, and they don't understand it. You have imbeciles in the place where you should be getting advice. You have idiotic people back in the 19th century doing some outdated science and nothing to do with what you're doing and trying to accomplish, and they shut you down because you're not their friend. They cater to their friends and family. And make no mistake, nature journals are like that too, and science and so forth. The editors cater to people that give them prestige, and everybody's busy checking a box to get a raise. They don't give a damn about actually what would improve our lives and our science and what would protect our science. We are at a very fragile moment in history, very fragile. Our science is really under attack. It's up to you that are the new generation to actually take action on this and do something about it. I have faced in my career enormous problems. I mean, I could just talk about it for ages, but I didn't let that to kill my spirit. I didn't let that to kill my innovation and my desire to help humanity and give my time. I give it all 24/7 to people I don't know. I don't know these people. I've never seen them. I don't have kids. Why do I care about autism? I don't even have kids, right? But it's your duty in this earth because you were given this opportunity and you're part of a very small percentage of the population that has the mind and the training that you have. It's your duty. Do something with it. It's your time. And at every time, this is exactly it. You know, this was my time 20 years ago and it still is. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. You know, it's just that. But if I had sold my soul to the devil, yes, I would be rich. I assure you of that. My stocks would be high up there and I would be making thousands per hour because I have been offered that already. So it's a matter of choice. I mean, but no, I go to bed at night and I'm very happy. I can sleep like a baby. No problem. So, all right. So that's that. We can do something, look at these forms and so forth and have fun with it. This is also food for thought. A lot of these things go straight to the cognitive issues, to the issues of the mind, the human mind, how we created this mess. I'm sure that there are no chimpanzees out there, and even though they are 99% of the DNA sharing the DNA, confronting the social media issue, right? I mean, it's our making, you know, so all these things that were so special cognitively and so forth, well, maybe that's not, you know, to our advantage because we're shooting ourselves on our foot. So
we just are more cognitively capable because there was the need. There was the need in the environment to be so. There's nothing else. That's what I believe, at least. It's not something magical. We just had the problems to solve.
One thing is that we find the problems to solve. We go and define them and redefine them and then go solve them. And we have this arrogance in ourselves that we go for it and do it. And that arrogance is got to be tamed. It's got to be tempered a little bit because we need to gain some humbleness and respect the rest of the planet. That's like this kind of attitude, like we're here above, you know, whatever, a mosquito. Well, you know, I got news for you. You know, here we are with the coronavirus, right?
Yeah, but everyone will end up in the same place as the mosquito, right? So
yeah.
Well, and not only that, we might not be that far ahead because apparently we're boycotting a certain coconut milk brand because people have trained monkeys to pick the coconuts for them. So they were using monkeys to harvest coconuts to make a coconut milk.
Really?
Yeah. And so now that brand is
monkeys as workers?
So I'm saying we don't have this long, you know. I mean, you know, the monkeys are going to catch up to us.
Yeah, I think it's the octopus. I think the octopus is the next intelligent.
Well, I mean,
my husband
I feel like we catch up with monkeys because they have been doing so much better for the planet.
Exactly. I was just gonna say, well, I wasn't gonna say the monkeys. I was gonna say the microbiome that we don't even understand, and we're like symbiotic living with it. But if it turns to us against us for whatever, we're gonna be in deep trouble.
Yeah,
there's like a copy of us walking around with us, and that copy is going to better be our friend, because if it befriends the other microbes out there, it's not going to be good for us. I mean,
our knowledge is especially bad with symbiotic relationships. I feel like our science is very directed towards linear causal effects. So we break out everything in small steps because that's what we can understand. Small steps. We have great science for small steps. but symbiotic living requires understanding a holistic understanding, which I think our science somehow
I think we
still
have the
is catching
tools for
up to develop that ability to talk about symbiosis and holism.
Yeah.
that.
An
Yeah.
ecosystem. There is, that's exactly it. We have this kind of epsilon local little modification. That's a reductionist approach. You control it for everything. Every time I hear the word I control for this or that, like, oh, kill me. Because it's like, no, it's that you're killing the whole phenomena. You just need to study it in the broad network dynamical systems approach, where everything is interacting with everything, and caveat that you're not seeing a whole other bunch of stuff that you didn't even think about because it's not entering in your consciousness right now.
Yeah. We
Well-
finally will have the tools,
Yeah.
but they're still developed. The tool, the math for all these, all that stuff. So.
Eventually, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to now share, go back to our, let me see, because I always screw up with this. Hold on a second. Let me share G's paper, which is actually doing quite well. And then we talk about that. And then I want to talk about the 7 universal micro expressions, because we're going to start having fun with it and analyzing ourselves. So we're entering in this. We still have another, like the next lecture, I want to like go over the code for doing a lot of this stuff. But then I'd like us to start collecting our own data and analyzing it and so forth. I mean, collectively or individually and so forth. But I'll show you some examples of what we did in the lab. And I just, like the past couple of days, been playing with that data. So it's very like I right out of the oven. But we can do these things and we can do even better. So, but let me start out with G's paper. Okay, where are you? Let me see. So hopefully this will work. And then you can